Picture the scene, a high-stakes political TV panel, the air thick with tension. Into the fray steps Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, bold, articulate, unflinching. In one concise sentence delivered live on national television, she detonates a verbal bomb that sends both former President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance reeling. And when I say lost it, I mean their composure cracks on live broadcast, exposing a very human and very political reaction to truth. Here's how it unfolded. Crockett, a rising star in the Democratic ranks, calmly laid bare a truth that struck a nerve, a critique sharp enough to expose vulnerabilities in Trump and Vance's platform. It wasn't a personal insult. It wasn't incendiary rhetoric. It was a pointed, evidence-backed statement about policy failures, packages of truth served cold and direct. The result, a response from Trump and Vance that seemed more like panic than rebuttal. Most notable was Vance's reaction, visibly flustered, trying to regain control of the narrative but struggling under Crockett's calm logic. His typical swagger gave way to defensiveness, even anger. Trump followed suit, mocking Crockett's intelligence, calling her low-ick, and insisting her critiques were irrelevant. But that didn't stick. In fact, Crockett turned his insult on its head, living proof that intelligence isn't just measured by bombast, but by substance and conviction. Let's step back and appreciate why this moment resonates. For years, MAGA figures like Trump have wielded personal insult, calling her lowlife, low-ick, even a Putin's hoe, as standard attack lines. But Crockett didn't flinch. Instead, she called out hypocrisy, highlighting her own credentials, doctorates, commencement addresses, a track record of legal and policy work, and told the world exactly what she thought, that this wasn't personal, this was about competence and leadership. On Jimmy Kimmel Live, she went even further, challenging Trump to prove his IQ or credentials, pointing out reality versus rhetoric. She said his constant name, calling underscores what many already suspect, insecurity, not strength. Meanwhile, her supporters celebrated, calling her a national treasure, and applauding her direct style on social media. Now imagine the impact. A live TV audience watches a seasoned politician, unafraid, dismantle two of the most recognizable figures in modern politics. That's not a debate Crockett's leadership in action, and it rattles the opposition by exposing them as reactive rather than proactive, personal rather than policy, focused. J.D. Vance's meltdown wasn't just a blip. It revealed a deeper truth. He was caught off guard not by a smear, but by grounded critique. His upset was less about Crockett and more about the exposure of weak foundations in his and Trump's messaging. And Trump's low IQ jibe, it wasn't a comeback. It was an old strategy failing to land against someone who calls out empty rhetoric and backs it with substance. This moment marks more than just political theater. It's part of a shift in tone on national discourse. In past cycles, such exchanges faded fast, but now Crockett's words are being shared, debated, reposted, turning a moment on live TV into viral testimony. She's not just making noise, she's building a momentum. Consider this, after that clash, Republicans conceded. Folks from across the aisle admitted Crockett's message hit hard. Some even said Republicans privately admit they like her clarity. Public perception is shifting. Leaders who rely on ridicule are being exposed by leaders who bring reason. And the broader effect, it's a reminder to politicians everywhere. Insult gets attention, but truth builds trust. Crockett didn't aim for a viral sound bite. She aimed to shift the narrative, the backlash. It only amplified her message, exposing the fragility of a strategy based solely on mockery. So as you reflect on this moment, remember the power of authenticity over theatrics, of knowledge over noise. In a world suffused with spin, a single sentence of grounded truth, from someone who knows the issues and isn't afraid to call them out, can shake the foundations of even the loudest stage. That's the story here, the beauty of bold truth telling and the fragility of ego-driven politics. Jasmine Crockett didn't just land a good line, she challenged an entire approach, and watching Trump and Vance scramble on live television underscored just how powerful that challenge was. Think of it as political fisticuffs in slow motion, not a shouting match, but a surgical strike. And the aftershocks, they're still reverberating. Jasmine Crockett's refusal to back down in the face of insult and intimidation represents something far bigger than a viral moment on TV. It signals a profound shift in how power is confronted and how truth can reclaim space in political discourse. When Crockett stood her ground after Trump referred to her as low-ick, she didn't just defend herself, she exposed the weakness in his approach. That moment, delivered with grace, precision, and a firm grip on facts, wasn't just a comeback, it was a case study in what it means to hold power accountable, especially when that power has grown used to operating unchecked through bullying and spectacle. For years, Trump's political brand has been about reducing his opponents to nicknames, cutting them down with words rather than winning arguments on merit. It's worked before, because many of his targets either tried to ignore him or stooped to his level. But Crockett did neither. Instead, she responded with clarity and strength, focusing not on his insult, but on what that insult revealed. She said, without needing to shout, that it's time to stop mistaking volume for leadership and cruelty for strength. In doing so, she reminded everyone watching, voters, colleagues, opponents, that credibility comes not from attacks, but from substance. Her response didn't just resonate because it was fiery or sharp, it resonated because it was true. Trump called her low-ick because she criticized him with facts, because she dared to speak confidently about her own record and challenge the narrative he and his supporters have worked so hard to control. And when he threw that label at her, she didn't just brush it off. She leaned into the moment, using it as a platform to explain why people like him resort to that tactic in the first place. Because when you can't argue against someone's record, when you can't disprove their argument, the only thing left is to insult their intelligence. It's a tactic meant to silence, but Crockett made it backfire. She brought up her education, her record as a civil rights attorney, her role as a public servant who fights not just for show, but for results. She talked about her work, about the people she serves, and about how easy it is to throw stones from behind a gold-plated podium when you've never done the hard work of real leadership. But what makes her response so remarkable isn't just what she said, it's how she said it. She didn't get dragged into a screaming match. She didn't let Trump dictate the terms of the conversation. She kept her cool, used humor strategically, and stood taller every time he tried to belittle her. That's a form of political power we don't see enough of, the kind that doesn't demand respect with threats but earns it with integrity, and the result, a ripple effect. More people started paying attention to who Jasmine Crockett is. More people started questioning why someone like Trump needs to rely on name-calling when challenged by a strong, educated black woman. More people began to see that calling out hypocrisy, especially when it comes from someone with a track record of corrupt business dealings, lies, and authoritarian instincts, is not just brave, it's necessary. Crockett also exposed something deeper about Trump and those who operate in his orbit, including J.D. Vance. They thrive in environments where truth is bent, where fear is currency, and where dissent is punished with mockery. But when confronted by someone who won't play their game, who brings facts instead of fear, who stands firm instead of folding, they get thrown off balance. That's exactly what happened when she confronted them live, in front of millions. And we all saw what they did when confronted with someone they couldn't intimidate. They lashed out, they revealed their weakness, and in that moment, Crockett's strength shone brighter than any insult they could throw. That strength is important not just symbolically, but strategically. Because in today's political climate, courage doesn't just mean standing up to your enemies. It means refusing to let their tactics define the terms of debate. It means showing voters what real leadership looks like. Crockett didn't need to outshout Trump or belittle J.D. Vance to make her point. She needed only to speak the truth with confidence and let the weight of her words do the rest. And that's exactly what she did. In fact, her words echoed beyond the studio into homes, online spaces, and congressional chambers, people began to discuss not just what she said, but how she said it. They began to see her not just as a fighter, but as someone who represents the kind of grounded, informed leadership this moment demands. What's especially important to understand is that her response wasn't just about herself. It was about every person who's been dismissed, talked over, or told they weren't smart enough to speak up. It was a message to young women, to black voters, to underrepresented communities, that yes, your voice belongs here. Your intelligence belongs here. Your truth belongs here. And no amount of gaslighting from the powerful can take that away. She modeled a kind of courage that tells others they don't have to shrink themselves to survive in these spaces. They can rise, and in rising they can change the conversation. So when we say Trump and Vance lost it, after her remarks, we're not just talking about a moment of visible discomfort. We're talking about the unraveling of a narrative they've built, that they alone define strength, that they can't be challenged, that their insults are unanswerable. Crockett didn't just answer them, she flipped the entire dynamic. She made clear that the era of dodging accountability with cheap insults is ending, and that the future belongs to those who speak with courage, not contempt. And here's the truth. That's how real change begins. Not always with thunderclaps or headlines, but with one person standing firm, speaking clearly, and refusing to be bullied. That's what Jasmine Crockett did. That's why her words matter. And that's why the ones who tried to silence her ended up revealing their own silence, because they had no truth to stand on.